All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Southwest Ohio Full Court Press. I'm Seth Keim, as always. I've got with me Tony Peters. What's up, Tony?
Good. How are you doing today, Seth?
Pretty good, man. And we got our newest addition from Tri-State Hoops, Matt Bowman. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Not a whole lot. Well, guys, I think today some interesting news came out earlier in the week. The divisional realignments due to enrollment, competitive balance. I think the three of us just saw a lot of that and decided, why not jump on here, have a quick conversation about it, break it down a little bit. So you guys just want to jump on in?
Let's do it.
All right, man. So let's start with Division One. The sheets came out, so they're not specifically organized by region or anything. So we can kind of just run down, see if there's anything really notable. I think the first one that I see when I'm running down the list, moving up from Division One, is Ross out of Hamilton. I don't know that that's super noteworthy, but it is worth mentioning. Chardon out of, I believe is what, Northeast Ohio, Tony?
That's true.
Again, not a whole lot there. The University School out of Huntington, no. The first real big one that we come to due to competitive balance that I know, not necessarily Southwest Ohio, but pretty big news in the state, is St. Vincent St. Mary's. Give me your initial thoughts on that. I guess we'll start with Tony, kind of sound off, and then Matt, we'll get your take as well.
I think it's about time. That when you look at this team and the history they have, I think you can go back to 2016, 2017, and every time we've had a state tournament, St. V's been there. As good of a program as they've been, there's always been that debate, why are they not Division One? The one year they went to Division One, they made it to the state finals and lost to a powerful Moeller team. So it's not like they can't handle it. And especially when you see what they did last year in the Division II tournament, blowing out Alter, and we all know how good Alter was with them being in our neck of the woods, and then doing the same thing to Gilmore in the state finals. Something needed to change. There's no reason for that team to continue to just dominate. It just isn't fair to D2. So my initial thought was it's about time, and I think it's going to make Northeast Ohio a gauntlet when it comes to that district tournament next year, when you have them, St. Ignatius, St. Ed's, Hoban had a good year last year. I think it's going to make it real interesting for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Division II is now, I think, kind of wide open.
I would say, yeah.
He's gone. I was thinking today, like, hypothetically speaking, if they were in D1 last year, what would the state finals have looked like? If I would imagine St. V against Centerville in the state semifinal, and then who knows what would have happened there. I know they played earlier on in the season. I think St. V was up in that game for most of the game, and then Centerville kind of ran away with it a little bit later in the game. I think they only won by 7, but if I remember right. But yeah, Division One is, I think, that much makes it that much tougher now.
No, absolutely. And you make a good point. And I think it would have been interesting to see how the regional alignment would have worked out. I think they probably would have taken St. Aggie's spot, right? In that.
It's hard to tell because Northeast districts, 2 of them go west, that would have played with, would have went up against Pick Central. The other 4 would have went up against Centerville. So it just depends on what bracket they picked.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see if they do indeed make it there this year, how that all shakes out as well. But certainly extremely notable. I think all 3 of us in agreement that it was about time. Again, when you've got, what now, is it 10 that Coach Joyce has won at St. V's and 9 as head coach? If I remember that right? Or something crazy like that. It's just, they've just been running through it. And again, Tony, to your point, even when they were brought up a couple of years ago, they made that run all the way to the state title game against Moeller. So about time there. Next notable ones that I see, we kind of have a cluster here. A couple Cincinnati, a couple Columbus schools, all up due to enrollment. First one, maybe Matt, you've got a little more insight on this. Aiken coming up, pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
the last year or two, I mean, that's just going to be a bloodbath, I believe, right?
I would imagine, yes. Yeah, Aiken has not made a whole lot of noise lately.
No, and I don't think that's going to change anything. I mean, if anything, it'll make the issue, that much worse. Out of Columbus, you've got Columbus South now in Division One. They were D2 contenders. Made some runs the last couple.
Go look at Zach Fleer's Twitter. I mean, Zach had a great history where Columbus South, I think they've only got, it looks like 356 boys is what they had. Go look at what the school is. I mean, you're looking at almost 1,000 kids. You got a 300 boy school going up against 1,000. That doesn't make sense. If this were Francis DeSales or St. V, where it's a private school and they can go get those kids, that's one thing. Columbus South is a public school. So, I mean, those guys, in my opinion, realistically should be more of a Division II level. I know they fluctuated a couple times. They were in D1 right after they made it to that state final against Trotwood. Right. They did pretty well that year. And they got some young talent, so like they're going to have a chance to be a special group. So it's kind of unfortunate to see them in D1 just because now you got to get through the Pickeringtons and the Reynoldsburg programs. And I just don't know if Columbus South has the depth to beat a team like that. But, I think them and even DeSales, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard thing. And this DeSales team is not the DeSales team from 2 years ago that made it to the state final. Not even close. So I think for both those teams, South probably has a better chance in DeSales to find some success in the tournament. But regardless, I don't see either of those, unfortunately, winning a district title out of D1.
Right, and that's just tough. I mean, they've got brought up due to enrollment, just like Aiken, and they're all within 10 to 20 guys in the adjusted enrollment numbers of still being in D2. That's just, I know you got to draw the line somewhere, but to me, there's not anyone until you get closer to, I mean, heck, even St. V's has 370 enrollment, and they're adjusted for competitive balance. So, that enrollment line, I think, is such a hard target, especially like you said, when you got schools that have 1,000+ guys to pull from. Definitely a little tougher. As we go down a little further, then some more that'll make some news to some people down here. Really, the main one being the last one by a cutoff of what seems to be about one guy in terms of enrollment, but brought up due to competitive balance, Trotwood. Little tough. There was a while there a number of years ago where that argument, I think, certainly could have been made. I don't know if that decision for competitive balance was made based on the last few seasons. Because certainly, last season they were still good, but I don't know that they were good enough to warrant being brought all the way up.
No, I don't think that, you put this Trotwood team in state you put this Trotwood team in D1 even after they won that state title. I don't think they go, maybe the 1 year when Macomb was there, they might have been a little bit of a contender, but I don't see this team being that D1 program. And that was Matt can vouch for this at Wright State's team camp yesterday. There was a couple people talking about that just because it's like you said, Seth, they've been there before. It's not like they've never been to D1 before, but man, it's just when your top players are juniors and you're talking about the talent D1 with Centerville and the GWalk being a cluster for that 2 through 5 spot, and that's who you're competing against at a district level. I think it's going to be kind of hard for Rocky in that group.
Yeah, and Matt, your thoughts on that?
No, I would. I'd agree with that. I was shocked at Trotwood moving up to D1. Frankly, I mean, it would have been maybe a little bit of a different look last year with Marmar playing, but I don't think I was shocked at it. Frankly. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough draw for Rocky. Not that they're not going to go out there swinging for the fences because that's what they're always going to do. And they're going to be hungry, but certainly notable. That's mainly the D1. D1 probably had the least amount of movement just because you only have the ability to be brought up. I think as we get into D2, D3, we've got a lot more movement going on. Any others, Tony, just from your glances? I know I skipped over a few of the ones that were brought up or kept the same from around the state. Any other real notable ones from around the state in D1?
Well, I got one. Yeah, I got one, and then but before I do that one team locally we forgot to touch on was Monroe. They were the other kind of big one besides Trotwood.
They were, yeah.
That jump. And that was a little different because you look at Monroe and you think of what Division One. You think of Division One. You think of the talent that's in Division One. You got Devon Royal. You had Centerville. You got Ignatius. You got all that talent. You put Monroe in there. Monroe does not have a roster to play in Division One. I'm sorry, they do not. And I guess that the city itself is booming. That's why they moved up. It wasn't competitive bound.
Right. It was enrollment.
But come on, guys. Like there's no way that team should be in Division. There's no.
Not
at all.
It was a struggle last year for them.
It ain't gonna get any easier come tournament draw though.
No, it's not.
And then who else, Tony?
Well, before I get into that, think about it too. In the Southwestern Buckeye League, that league's not getting you ready for Wayne and Fairmont and Centerville.
Well, you saw that with, and I'm sure we'll touch on it here in a minute. You saw that with Franklin for the longest time, even though they were running the Southwestern Buckeye League for years. They were hit. There was nowhere for them to go once they got to the state tournament. They might win their first game or two, but they wouldn't even, get to their divisional final. They're getting railroaded, or if they did, then all of a sudden they hit a brick wall of a Centerville or a Wayne or Springfield or, somebody like that, or God forbid they take the South bracket and run into a Moeller, a St. X, those guys. That's murderer's row.
Yeah.
It is.
The Southwest Buckeye League was a problem for them last year. They started off 4-0, but Southwest Buckeye League played 4-9 last year. I don't know, playing Oakwood, Franklin.
Yeah, if your whole conference that you're playing in is that D2 or smaller type schools, it shows you the talent pool that you're pulling from in the larger area. That's just a tough one. I get that it's enrollment, so there's not a lot of choice there, but yeah, that's a tough one to swallow.
It is. The only other one I want to touch on is Louisville. They were 20-win team a year ago in D2. Looks like they moved up due to the looks like they were enrollment based. Really young team. For those that maybe follow AAU, a lot of their top players play for the Gurus of Go. That was on the Adidas 3SSB at the 15U level, and I believe is undefeated on the 3SSB. They're not a team that jumps off the page in terms of having like a freak athlete like a Devon Royal or even like a sharpshooter like a Jonathan Power, Gabe Cups, but they play really good defensive fundamental basketball. I could see this being really kind of the start of something special for them moving to D1. This year, I don't think will be, I don't know if they'll hit 20 run, but give it a year or two, a year after this, this could be a team that is potentially challenging in that always tough Northeast gauntlet.
No, definitely. I would agree. So with that, I guess we'll transition right into D2. First one on the top of the sheet, Tecumseh. They were in D1 last year. Now they're dropping down so that they're at the top of D2 in terms of enrollment, but they were brought down by competitive balance. Thoughts?
Loss of Colin O'Connor
doesn't help.
Centerville doesn't help. They lost to, what was the final of that Centerville tournament game? And then they take Tecumseh's best player. Yeah, it wasn't good.
A little insult to injury, huh?
Yeah. So that was kind of no shock to me.
For sure. Tony?
I agree. Even when they had Colin O'Connor, I felt like it was much for them to be in Division One, but again, I guess the metrics they had just enough guys. It looks like, because it looks like they're on the top end of the D2 one, so they must have been.
But they were brought down due to competitive balance. So ultimately might be a better move for them, at least when it comes to state tournament, tournament draw. I don't know that they're going to have the roster to make the type of moves even in D2, but I still I guess that would be considered in my eyes, a good move down due to competitive balance, for sure. Going down the list, there were a couple that stayed the same from the previous competitive balance, so we don't necessarily need to get into that. Bedford, Tony, anything really there that we know of? Not much.
Not much with Bedford, but the one I think you're probably getting ready to go up to it, Matt. I want your thoughts on this. Mount Healthy moving down.
Yep, that was next up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Mount Healthy. I don't know what to say about them. They're an okay team. I mean, finished right around 500 last year. Lost by 30 to Princeton in the tournament. I mean, do I think it's a good move? Probably.
Yeah.
But again, like, the conference they're playing in isn't a conference that's gonna. I mean, they're playing Harrison and Edgewood, Talawanda. Like, some of those teams are just not getting them ready for that D1.
Well, and this is D2, so they were brought down.
Right.
So it ultimately, again, I think some of the move down due to competitive balance or even enrollment, I think tends to be the stuff that's a little bit more fair. Sometimes it's the move up, and because we're at the top of Division 2, we're seeing that. I'm sure we'll get into some of the other ones that are a little different. There are a few coming up here, though. Look around. Next big notable one, enrollment, Franklin, brought down to D2. Kind of doing a flip-flop with Monroe.
I feel kind of bad, because if this team would have been in D2 last year, they probably would have been maybe not beating a CJ or an Alter, but you put them in a Carroll, they could have given Carroll a game, and then 100%. You would have Roger Bacon, they could have probably beat Roger Bacon. I mean, it is what it is, but it kind of sucks now because you lost your two best guys in Rich and Perlberg. Your coach is now gone. Your legendary coach fails. It's a good move comparatively, but at the same time, it's still unfortunate because I don't see Franklin necessarily dominating like they have in the past with those departures that they've had, whether they move up or down.
Right. Next one that comes, just running down the sheet, enrollment, Madison down to D2. Thoughts there, Matt? Anything? No? Not much.
Not much on Madison.
Okay. No, perfectly fine. Again, some of it, there's not a ton to talk about. I don't think there's a lot to talk about with Alliance, Lincoln West School of Studies now. Zanesville brought down from Division 1. Tony, do you know much about Zanesville?
They're they were like one of the biggest schools in that Eastern District, so I think probably going to end up going to Central Ohio when it comes to their bracket, but they don't really have anything that makes me think they're going to be making a deep run of any nature. If that's what
even in D2, yeah. Chagrin Falls, Kenston out of Chagrin Falls, not a ton. Then we get into our first move up due to enrollment, and a big one here in the Dayton area in Meadowdale. No, they were poised going, looking ahead to this year with the guys they got coming back, Benson and company. I mean, you were looking at a Meadowdale that was going to be probably a Division 3 powerhouse here in D3 coming out of this area. Now they get brought up. I mean, that's got to hurt big time.
It's unfortunate again, especially when you look at, when you make anytime you make a regional semifinal and then the next year you get bumped up, there's always that question, can that team do it again? And you kind of hit on it. They got Kaliria Reeves and Lee Benson. If there was a team I had to bet money on would be able to repeat what they did in their previous division, Meadowdale would probably be that one team out of the Dayton areas of that.
Right.
And really, I don't think they're going to miss that much of a beat, just because if you think about it, in City League play, they're playing Dunbar. That's the they're going to get in the district. You know, they're already going to play teams like that. They play Trotwood, who's now obviously a Division I team. They play these teams that are in that same division as them. I don't think it's going to hurt them as much as people think. And frankly, I still think they're going to be one of the better teams in Dayton, even at the D2 level. But yeah, if they were in D3 this year, we'd be talking about them being one of the contenders to win a regional title, just with that group.
Right. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the one which we'll get to in a little bit too, or I guess I can talk about it now. CHCA. Yeah. CHCA is moving up too for I believe it was competitive balance, but
yep.
I mean they went toe to toe with Meadowdale I think in the district final last year, and Meadowdale ended up coming away with that late in the game. But I mean CHCA moving up too. I mean I think that hurts them now. I mean they're losing Jake Fisher, Eric Rakestraw, probably two of their better players. Jake Fisher averaged 15 a game last year. Sharpshooter from deep. Like, I think that hurts them a little bit moving forward. Interested to see how they're going to do it fair in D2. But again, like for competitive balance reasons, at D3 they were, pretty solid team.
Yeah.
But yeah, Meadowdale, I agree, Tony. I think that could hurt them a little bit moving up.
Well, and I think again with it being, what did we say? It was due to enrollment. Too. Yeah. That's a little tougher. I think sometimes enrollment's a little tougher than competitive balance to swallow, kind of like we've talked about already. It's interesting to me that CHCA gets brought up due to competitive balance, but then our next big one to talk about, Taft, your D3 state champion, gets brought up, and it's only due to enrollment.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Yeah,
I guess if they can use enrollment as the main factor, they're going to use the enrollment numbers over competitive balance. But still, again, yeah, Taft was running through that bracket in D3. If Rayvon's there or not, depending on, I think he's going off to Arizona, that team's not going to be able to compete in D2 again. I mean, they're going to be good, and they play a lot of I think their conference gives them that ability, kind of like Meadowdale, Tony, you talked about, gives them a little bit more preparation for it, but I think it puts a much more of a cap on how far they can potentially go coming out, right?
Yeah, I'm interested to see Taft in D2. They're solid even without Rayvon, but
right.
With Rayvon, could they repeat in D2? Maybe.
Well, I mean, you take, like you said, you take St. V's out of the equation, and there's not a ton of teams. I mean, taking St. V's out, you've got Buckdale out of the Akron area that's going to be a state contender in D2. D2 is not as strong across the state. You take out St. V's, there's not a pencil them in candidate for it. And certainly I think across the state, D2 is going to be a little bit weaker this year. So that may play to Meadowbrook and Taft, CHCA's, play to their benefit potentially.
Yeah, I could see Taft making a run. I don't know that they're going to win state again this upcoming season, but Ian Elmer is improving. Yeah. You've got their big man Kyron Granville. So, yeah, I mean, Quan Bostic just transferred over from Woodward.
Interesting.
So I'm interested to see them compete in D2 this upcoming season.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
Sorry, I think it'll be interesting too with Taft. I mean, Matt already hit it. They got Quan Bostic. I'll be interested to see if they end up getting any other names, because if they have anybody else transfer in, I mean, you lose Rayvon, but if you get enough guys that want to go play for the defending state champions, like y'all said, that this would be the year to do it because D2 is a little bit more open, like you said.
Right, and everybody, we've all seen the news about Rayvon leaving, but nothing's ever set in stone either. I mean, heck, Andre a couple of years ago said he was going to Huntington Prep, and then by the end of summer he was right back involved. So I guess still anything can happen. And with those moves in, if for whatever reason that move to the prep school to Compass doesn't work out for Rayvon for whatever reason, they're going to be a contender in D2, and then then it's a good competitive balance move, because otherwise they'd be your pencil them in, at least state finalist, Final Four at the very least, I would think. Next one up, maybe not a ton to talk about. Bethel from out of Tip City getting moved up. I think that one that was due to enrollment. That's a tough pill to swallow. Love their program, love the school, love everybody there. So shout out to any of the Bethel folks that might be watching. We love you guys. But that's going to be a tough one come tournament time. I mean, even being in D3, they weren't making a ton of noise. So being brought up that's going to hurt.
Can you imagine a Bethel versus Taft matchup?
No, they're going to get destroyed. I mean, it could have happened last year.
Yeah, it could have happened last year, I guess.
But at least then they're in D3, and it might take a little more to get to that. That's just, again, to me, that's just another one of those tough moves. Tony, anything Elyria Catholic? Do we know much about that? You don't know much about them? Bishop Reddy out of Columbus got brought up due to competitive balance.
That's a big one. Reedy, that's a big one. They were one of the better teams in Columbus last year. You take away Dalen Swain and Afrocentric, Reedy was probably one of those next best teams up. They brought back a ton of those guys. Luke Coleman, Luke Ruth, I think is the one guy's name, Caleb Schaefer. They got plenty of guys that know how to play. They play very methodical, tough basketball. And, I mean, you're coming into D2. Off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of a lot of Columbus-based teams into D2. They're going to jump off the page. Columbus South was probably the one right off the bat, and they're gone now.
Yep.
I could see Reedy being a team that makes a run out of D2, but it's going to depend where they go in terms of like the regional, because since Columbus can go to separate brackets. So depending on where they choose to go, you could be talking about a state semifinal team or more like a district final, regional semifinalist. So we'll see. But that's a big move, for them. For them, yeah, absolutely.
Next one, big for our region, then Reading, Matt, from down there, due to enrollment, but they didn't make a ton of noise in D3. I think a couple of years ago they might have at least been to the district level. Maybe if I can't remember they were at UD at some point in the last couple of years, but still being brought up from D3 to D2, that's a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. They were middle of the pack last year in Cincinnati Hills League. Taylor, Indian Hill, Deer Park, that league. Lost in the first round, opening round of the tournament last year to Marymount. Not a whole lot to say there. I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, moving from D3 to D2, I think hurts them.
Yep. And then really the next one that makes a big impact for us, unless you see anything else around the state, and kind of to wrap up D2 then, would be the move up from D3 due to competitive balance for Middletown Madison.
I think we already touched on them at the beginning. I believe
a little bit.
You said Madison. That's a different Madison, I think.
That's a different Madison, but that was D1.
That was D2.
That was D1.
That was D2 there, bud.
What are you talking about?
Regardless, I'll just repeat what we said. Madison, not much to say about Middletown Madison. I mean, that Southwestern Buckeye League West is not as strong as the East. So, but you did ask for any more in the state. You forgot another one, man. I'm about to slap you on the wrist.
Got it, dude. I'm just trying to run through this sheet. Like you said, it's not like it's regionalized or anything. I'm just trying to look down through here. Like, if you got it pulled up, throw in here. I mean, come on now.
I do, and it's hashtag Dayton Elite. You know, Shawnee with Zion Crow.
Yeah,
they're moving up to D2.
Oh, I don't know how did we miss that?
Dude, this sheet is not conducive. This sheet is not conducive to looking through this and trying to scan it.
It's really
for who. I think I skipped over it because you jumped down to CHCA.
Yeah,
and they were just above, because I also don't know, Tony, Lima Bath, anything of note there?
Just that Sean Powell, who used to coach at Bot, their head coach.
That's about it. Okay. But yeah, so Springfield Shawnee getting brought up from D3 to D2. Another tough one due to enrollment, right? Yeah, it's enrollment.
Sorry, Zion. Sorry, RJ.
Yeah.
It sucks because the CBC is not. It's not a good conference. It's just not. You take Jonathan Alder and London out, and maybe another team here or there on a good year. That conference is not that deep. And now, arguably your best team out of Dayton side of it, and probably one of the best players is Zion Crow, where it's a little harder to make the plays that he would make in D3.
Right. Again, but, you know, with some of the other moves that are being made, you know, you got a lot of those guys that they were running into in D3 in the tournament being brought up with them at the very least. Maybe some of the other stronger teams from around the area moving out, you know, it might not be as big of a hit necessarily for, you know, your Middletown Madisons, your Shawnees, your Taft, your CHCA, maybe not as big of a hit because a lot of the usual suspects that they were running into at the D3 level have come up with them. And D2 overall being a little bit weaker coming into this year, at least from a full state perspective. So that's, I think, then we covered our butts then on the rest of the state there, Tony. I didn't miss anything else?
Nothing else I've made out now.
All right. So D3, kind of starting at the top again, which is moving down from D2 into D3. You've got Clearview out of Lorraine. Anything of note there, Tony?
No, I'm going to Matt. Anything on Norwood?
Not a ton. Probably good move there.
Then probably who Valley View, Tony, being moved down.
I was going to echo what Matt said. I mean, it's probably a better move for them. They lost their best player in JT Ferguson, so it's probably better for them to be playing in D3 versus D2, for being honest.
Gotcha. Then the next notable one, those were all competitive balance moves. I think, like you said, the right adjustment there. Next one, due to enrollment being brought down, Waynesville.
Unfortunate again, or not unfortunate. I mean, it's unfortunate they lost a player in Josh Mitchell. You know, didn't make a lot of noise last year is what I thought they might be able to do. Again, they're going to kind of fit the theme, as I think a lot of the teams were going to say that moved down from 2 to 3 is it's a good move for them. Just it'll be a little more equal playing for them versus having to go play a Dunbar or opponents or CJ in the first round.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Running down, then there's not a whole lot else. Well, there are some around the state. You got Heath. I don't know if there's anything of note with Heath at all being moved down due to enrollment.
They graduated everyone from that team last year that was in the regional finals, so they're not a year ago.
Gotcha. Perry getting moved down. Anything of not really anything of note there. No. Northwestern out of Springfield getting moved down. I mean, they've not made a ton of noise. They got brought down due to enrollment, but it could have just as easily have been competitive balance.
Competitive balance.
But it is enrollment, at least by the sheet. And then Milton Union, Tony, getting brought down due to enrollment.
That's an interesting one. And I think that could end up being actually pretty good for them. They 17 wins a year ago, was in D2, lost to Bellbrook in the tournament, but you're bringing back Blake Brumbaugh and Cooper Brown, 2 seniors. I think moving to D3 is good, and they've made runs before, right? That COVID year, if you guys remember, they got mercy ruled, but they played Taft for a district final up at Butler. So they've done it before, and I think that this group, Brumbaugh was part of that team. I think that they can do it again, and I think that we could really see something special out of them for sure.
Yeah. Matt, anything to add?
No.
Nope. All right. Just trying to then run down. You've got Spencerville being brought up due to enrollment from D4. I don't know if there's much to talk about there. Who else went down? Bard Early High School, College, nothing really. Huron was brought down due to enrollment.
A decent one.
Decent. Expound.
I think they were undefeated regular season last year. So in D2 out of Northwest Ohio. So them moving down, they bring back their top guy, Dylan Holler, from a year ago. I think they got a couple of those other guys back. So that could be a team coming out of Northwest Ohio potentially.
Yep. And then probably the next notable one as I'm looking down, getting brought up due to competitive balance out of the Toledo area, Emmanuel Christian out of Toledo, Tony.
Huge for them. I think if they were in D4, that's probably one of your favorites to win or give Richmond Heights a challenge at the D4 level last year. They've got obviously arguably one of the top 2 2025s in the state and in the country, and Jerry Easter, the second or third. Jalen Brown, a junior guard for them, another really good one. I saw during AAU they got a 6'8" center, Jamie Rivers, the senior, so they got some size to go with those guard play. I think the biggest thing for them is if they can, their biggest downside or their biggest flaw, I guess, is they're so athletic and so fast-paced. Run into a small-town team, that's when they struggle. So as long as they can, take care of that this time around in D3, I think it's still fair to say they could still be one of the top teams out of D3, even though they're moving up.
So good move there overall. Cool. Yeah. Let's see. Up due to enrollment, Cuyahoga Heights, Brookfield. Let's see. Cardington Lincoln. Not really. Grandview Heights got brought up. Peebles got brought up. Independence, Cary, Valley, East Knox got brought up from Division 4. And I know they at least made it to the divisional last year in D4, but were overwhelmed. I don't necessarily know that that's a great move for them. I think that probably hurts them in the long run. Let's see.
Well, considering the team that overwhelmed them is in this division now, I would say that's going to be a little bit of a.
Well, damn, now you're just jumping the gun here, Tony. I mean, we got Columbus Grove got brought up from D4 as well. At least somewhat notable along with Parkway. I think that's going to hurt. But then, yeah, let's get to the one that you're obviously chomping at the bit here then, Tony, would be Tri-Village being brought up from D4 into D3.
I can't remember the last time it's happened. As long as I've been a fan of high school basketball and followed it and watched as a kid, I never remember Tri-Village being anything from D4. So this might be a first, at least in my lifetime. And it's real unfortunate because I think you win games in D3 and D4 with your guard play. So guard, upperclassmen win. And you got 2 of those in Dalton DeLong and Wilson Suggs. I don't think Tri-Village is winning a state title in D4, but I think they would have been one of the best teams still. Now you put them in D3. You got Preble Shawnee with Mason Trout, who's in their conference that you know how to get through. You got Miami East. You got Milton Union. I mean, I can name a couple more teams. The point is, they're not the big fish in the little pond anymore. Now they're a little fish in a bigger pond. And
all without the Lane Sarver too.
Without okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they got I will say the one thing that they do have that helps them is having a guy like Justin Finkbein that can go make plays for you defensively. He's a bigger body. That's going to help them a lot. And then they obviously got Trey Sagister, who's Josh Sagister's son as a freshman. I haven't seen him play, but if he's as good as what I've heard, I think he'll help alleviate a little bit. But he's not Lane Sarver, like you said, Matt. So, you know, you kind of like finished the point there that I was going to get at, which was they're missing that one guy that you need to win at D3. And so it's unfortunate because they're probably one of the best teams in D4 if they stay there.
Yeah, 100%. That was a question I got even a couple weeks ago when I put a question on my story on Instagram. Like, is Tri-Village going to repeat next year? Well, you know, D4 maybe. I don't know. But my question was, who's going to step up and replace the scoring of Lane Sarver? You know, right. you have to have some guys step up and replace that, and they're capable of it, but.
Right. And I guess my biggest question, and part of the larger than conversation, I think, becomes I understand competitive balance moves when you've had multiple years of being down and then dropping a team down, or multiple years of just absolutely running the show like a St. V's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tri-Village, they made a decent run last year before getting knocked out, 2 years ago. Then last year, make it all the way to the state final game. But, you know, yes, they are, you know, historically one of the better teams in D4. But have they been so overwhelmingly good to warrant being brought up? And I know they don't want to take a look at it. I mean, if you were going to bring them up, it would have been made a lot more sense to bring them up for last year. I know these things are only looked at, you know, every so many years, but I feel like this is one of these that's ripe for they got moved up this time, and then 2 years from now when they go back to do this, unless they get some more guys through like a Lane Sarver, they're going to end up being dropped right back down because they're not going to be going anywhere in D3, and their enrollment's certainly not going up out in the middle of BFE, you know.
But I mean, of their enrollment numbers, they had 122, 16 were competitive balance. So I guess just to counter your point on the competitive side of it, I mean, you take away those 16, that's 106. They're still probably in Division 3 because I see teams that are in 79. So I think they were moving.
The top out. Oh, did we lose? We might have lost Tony. Top out for Division 4 is like 119. So if you lose that competitive balance, I mean, heck, even as it is, they're only like 3 away from still being in D4 due to enrollment. But with the competitive balance adjustment, take away 1 or 2 of those and they're right back in D4. So again, some of it is tough. I mean, Taft, yeah, they've been good, and on paper, people are, you know, you could have written them in at the beginning of every season, but they made early exits up until last year when they finally get over the hump. The second they do, then they get brought up, their best player's gone. Not that they're not going to be still good this year, but that's a tough move to make. I mean, as you look at as the being generally the brought up competitive balance is just, to me, it's really, really tough. But I guess we talked about that quite a bit. Who else got moved up? Parkway got moved up due to enrollment. That's only going to hurt them. Houston, same deal. They got brought up. Unfortunately, they weren't making any noise in D4. They're not going to be making any noise in D3. And then kind of the bottom here, Felicity Franklin, Grove City Christian, St. Thomas Aquinas, and Tree of Life all got brought up due to competitive balance.
Nothing major there.
No, but it's just, to me, some of the competitive balance, I think the move down in competitive balance makes sense for some of these schools. The ups, unless you're a St. Vincent, St. Mary's, those are some tough pills to swallow, I guess, is what I was trying to get at. Then we'll go to D4. Luckily, little shorter to wrap it up anyways, as we don't have as many of those we don't have any move ups because it's only downs. Just trying to run through it. If I would have thought there was anyone that might have, outside of St. V's, had a competitive balance adjustment, it might have been Richmond Heights, but they've got they've got a 21 competitive balance adjustment. They sit at 119, so they're at the very top threshold, and yet they're still in D4. I mean, I would say they're probably going to be the favorites to repeat. Wouldn't you think?
Matt, I'm gonna let you go first because I have a rant with this.
You have a rant with this?
I have a rant with
I
this.
just want to let you go first. I would think they're the favorites. I don't see a whole lot of other teams on that list that can compete with. I mean, maybe there are.
Right. And Tony, before I let you go on that rant, then I'll run through really quick some of the other ones.
I'm interested to hear this rant.
Right. Just because I think it's more of an overall deal. Dayton Christian locally getting moved down due to enrollment. I think that's a good move for them. NBC's not a super strong conference, so that for them to be playing in D3 was always tough. I think that's a good move down for them. Not a whole lot of Triad getting moved down due to competitive balance. Another one of those good moves. I'm just trying to run through the last of these real quick. I don't really think there's any more super notable. Cardinal Stritch, Tony, out of Northwest Ohio, down due to enrollment.
Yeah, they're always a really good team out of Northwest Ohio. So I think that regardless of what they have in terms of talent, I think they're going to be pretty solid still out of Northwest. I'll be curious though because a lot of those Northwest Ohio teams are the small towns like your Columbus Groves, your Ottovilles, Antwerp a year ago. Those small town teams find ways to beat those bigger teams. So I think that'll be interesting. Interesting move.
Okay. Let's see who else. Covington getting brought down. I think that's a good move. Springfield, New Middletown. Yeah, that's a good move. Jefferson out of Delphi. That's a good move. Miami Valley Country Day out of Toledo getting brought down due to enrollment. Anything noteworthy there, Tony?
Not with them, no.
Okay. What about the Wellington School out of Columbus?
That's a big one. We saw last year I'm going to use my words carefully here. We saw how much of a struggle Columbus was in D4 last year, considering East Knox was the team that came out and then look what Village did to them. Central Ohio in Division 4 was not very strong. Wellington now kind of takes that crown, I think, of maybe being that top team. And we saw the COVID year, they made it to the regionals, lost to a good Fort Loramie team. No, they beat Fort Loramie.
Yes, they did.
They were on the docket to play Jackson Center. They've done it before. They fluctuated in the past between 3 and 4. They got a really good player in AJ Taylor, who's a senior, 6'6", saw him play at Capitol last weekend. Really good player. And again, when you get a 6'6", 6'7" kid in D4, you're going to have a chance to be really successful. So this is a great move for them. And I think you're looking at maybe one of Central Ohio's best teams now in that D4 level with them.
Yep. And really that's all for D4. Most of it was up at the top. So I guess we'll circle back again to Richmond Heights, similar to that St. V's scenario. When you look at the type of team that they've got, and if there was going to be a competitive balance that would be made, if you looked overall at the state from the last couple of years and said there were two teams that needed to be competitively balanced, it would have been bringing St. V's up to D1 and bringing Richmond Heights up to D3 at the very least. So Tony, you said you had a rant. Let's hear it.
I started off. I mean, I haven't been doing this a long time, like in perspective to other people. I've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years. And the only other consistency behind St. V, or besides St. V and Moeller, is Richmond Heights. Obviously,
and Moeller can't go any higher.
Moeller can't go higher. St. V finally moved him up. Richmond Heights hasn't moved. And I guess my thing is, like, it's just very frustrating for that, because when you look at Division 4 and you look at the other teams that made it to to UD last year, Tri-Village, Antwerp, Berlin, Highland, those were small town, truly small schools. They didn't have a Division I, Big 12, not Horizon League or A10, Big 12 college commit in like Josiah Harris, and then your two freshmen, Dorian Jones and Derek Barber. Those are probably D1 kids too. My point is, I don't care where it comes from. The fact that you got a team of that nature in Division 4 and they didn't move up after blowing out. I mean, they completely dominated Highland in the second half. And then even Tri-Village, like they didn't even have Richmond Heights didn't even have Josiah Harris play in the state final, and they still blew out Tri-Village. I mean, and you're not going to move them up? I don't care what the numbers say. There has to be
right. There's got to be some justification. I mean, Tri-Village has 16 competitive balance, and they're the ones that got blown out by this team, and they're the one that gets moved up.
Yeah.
I get that the enrollment numbers are minute because they are at the very top at 119, but you can't tell me that team doesn't belong in a higher division. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think to me, like, again, that's what bothers me. You know, your Moelers and your St. V's, or even actually, before I say that, let me go back to my Columbus South example from earlier. Columbus South moves up to D1. It's unfortunate, but they can handle it because, like, even in D1, even like it's not going to be overwhelming. And if they stayed in D2, they're still not going to be overwhelming. St. V, if they stayed in D2, it was going to be over. But for Richmond Heights to be as good as they are, have the talent that they have, literally they're making it to Columbus every year. They're another one besides St. V. They've been to Columbus every year or in the state tournament every year. I've been doing this. And you're going to keep them in Division 4. This is why there's a problem with them getting people to come to the state championship games. Because when you have games like that, St. V playing a team and winning by 30, Richmond Heights beating a bunch of small town teams by 30 or 40, who would want to come watch that? For our jobs,
heck, we get bored sitting there, and this is the stuff that we love, and we're there. We're like, oh yeah, it'll be fun to watch, for the first half, maybe. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just, to me, there needs to be some sort of metric where you say, okay, they're not growing as a school, but you've been to state 6 straight years. Maybe it's time we move you up for a year and see what you can do. I think
because their enrollment number, you could have a private school of 20 freaking kids. I don't care. But if you bring in 4 of them specifically for basketball, I don't care how you do it, whether it's the private moving in, whether it's people moving in and taking jobs in those cities, whatever it may be, it's still overwhelmingly in favor in this way. And it's just
And let me say this, because I know there's some people that are going to say, well, they lost Josiah Harris, they lost London Mid, like they lost all those guys. I challenge you, if you think that, I challenge you to find me 5 players in Division 4 this year that are better players than the sophomores they have coming back, Dorian Jones, Derek Barber. I'd be willing to bet you will not find 5 that are better than them.
Not at all.
I don't know if sophomores or not. That's still the vision. Dorian Jones just got an offer from Ohio State.
Yeah.
And Derek Barber's not going to be far behind him.
He's got an offer from Arizona State. You're right.
Right, because anybody that watched that game last year could see that Barber. I get that Josiah Harris was sidelined, but if you looked at that state final game last year, those kids were by far and away the best kids on the court, and you had guys like Lane Sarver, who Barber's not a huge kid, but dear God, is he talented? I mean, it's just to me that the justification in some of the competitive balance to me doesn't make sense, because I don't see how Tri-Village has a competitive balance adjustment of 16 and Richmond Heights only has an adjustment of 21. They're 5 higher somehow, but yet they've got two kids with D1 offers. Tri-Village doesn't have kids with D2 offers.
Yeah.
Or maybe they will by the time this year's up, but still, they're borderline D2 kids, that are playing at a school like Tri-Village, and their balance is, when you're talking about 3 difference, that's the difference that you're going to put there is 3 and keep Richmond Heights down. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
But when Josiah Harris went down the state semifinal, I thought, okay, well here's Tri-Village's chance.
Yeah.
And then look what happens.
Not even close.
Still not a chance. Yeah.
No, it's just it was the same. I mean, it was the same thought process with St. V's for so many years. You got guys coming in, and I don't care who they lost in a given year. They were bringing more kids in. We still don't know who the heck else is going to show up on this Richmond Heights team coming into this year. I mean, they play a schedule that a D2 or a low-level D1 team would play all year long and compete and win.
Yeah.
Their closest games, if you look at it last year, their closest games were all D1 and D2 teams. So, I mean, I don't know.
If that doesn't scream at least D3, I don't know what does.
I could go on. I'll stop it at that, because I could go on for hours on this, and it's just unfortunate. So, and there is no win. There's no win-win. There's always going to be a problem. There's always going to be a team. I guess I'm just glad that they moved St. V up finally. Maybe if Richmond Heights dominates like I think they're going to dominate, maybe then they'll get moved up. And no one.
But then if they
down.
Right.
So it is what it is. But no.
What Go ahead, Tony. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're good.
Last thought that I kind of want to just throw out there, and something that just popped into my head recently, mainly as I was looking at a lot of this, is what would it do to the landscape of this if we expanded out to 5 divisions?
I was just thinking about that today.
And mainly what I mean by 5 divisions is taking that super strong pack of D1s, maybe cutting D1 in half, moving them up, cut D2. So all your low level D1s, your high level D2s then become Division 2, kind of split this, and then really give some of these smaller school teams a chance. Heck, some of the D3 teams, the lower level D3 teams that aren't, then I feel like you could have a lot more competitive balance of dropping teams down, shuffling around a little bit, and maybe your 5th division, Division 4, becomes more of your lower level competitive balance for whatever reason. Thoughts on that, guys?
Matt, I'll let you go first.
I've never considered that, but definitely an interesting thought. I mean, it would make sense. I think the small town D4 schools that really, like we're saying, don't have a chance to compete with some of these others, like a Richmond Heights, who arguably I think we're all in agreement should be D3. Gives those teams a shot. I mean.
Well, and I think it would just help to align. I think it would help to keep the divisions a little bit more competitive within their own brackets. I still think, regardless of how you look at it, or regardless of division, each division is so stinking top heavy. When you've got teams in D2 that are being brought up to D1 that are going to compete like a St. V's, okay, you win state 2 years in a row, or you make it to the regional 2 years in a row, you should probably move up due to competitive balance.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about
just by the eye test alone. I mean, my God, and maybe move teams around a little bit more, but at least then maybe it tries to cordon off some of that competitive, some of those blowouts that you get even at the regional level.
I was just about to say, talk about top heavy. I mean, look at Tri-Village and Jefferson last year.
Yep.
Look at Tri-Village Jefferson, and Jefferson gets.
Look at East Knox coming out of Columbus in D4 to take on Tri-Village and getting blown out. I mean, that's your regional. I mean, that's your, what was it? I guess that was district final, wasn't it, Tony?
The regional semis.
Oh yeah, because Botkins Tri-Village was the regional final. But still, you're getting your regional semi, so your divisional champs then, are coming out and they're so overmatched with the other regions. I mean, Centerville's walk wasn't that. I mean, on paper looked that easy. Pick Central's, a lot of them have it, but then you got Northeast and Northwest Ohio really weren't that strong last year in D1. I mean, there were. I don't know. It just, to me, it seems like you could you're never going to get rid of the blowouts and the divisions are top heavy, because if you looked at divisions 1 through 5, you would still have top heavy, but it wouldn't be as much of a fish in the barrel sort of a situation in the early tournament games for the lowest level bottom feeders in each division. I guess it would just make the tournament overall from beginning to end a lot more competitive. You wouldn't have as many blowouts, I don't think. But that was just a thought that popped into my head that I thought was halfway worth discussion.
And if I can throw in as well, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of schools. Football, we've got 7 divisions. Right. There's a lot of high schools that don't have football, that have basketball only. So I would argue that we've got more schools that play basketball than football in the state. So why are we only stuck at 4 when football's got 7? And I get with football it's a little different, because like your D1 kids in football are going to annihilate your D7 kids in football. I get that. So it's got to be a little more strict. But I think we're getting to a point in the basketball side of it where, I mean,
we don't need 7 divisions, but one more wouldn't.
No, we don't. Yeah, 7's excessive, 6 excessive. 5, I think, is a good number. And, let's balance it out a little bit, because there were some comments made that, the state tournament in this past year, attendance wasn't as big as they thought. And I do think, like I made a point when I was on my rant about Richmond, was there's a lot of people, I think, that are basketball fans that aren't going to go spend $20 to watch a D4 state final where you've got D1 kids blowing out country schools. Like, it's just not going to happen.
It's not $20. It's a heck of a lot more than $20 to go see that game.
Well, that's a low end number. I mean, and think about it. Like, your most exciting game, your most sold out game was Centerville Pickerington Central. I would say the most exciting game was Taft Ottawa Glandorf. That was the most evenly matched game besides Centerville Pick Central. And those were the 2 highest attended games you had.
Well, and then now you're throwing Taft up into D2. I mean, Ottawa Glandorf's going to feast in D3 now.
100%. But yeah, I mean, I think an extra division would help balance it out. And, I think the sooner we do it, the sooner we'll get more of these. We shouldn't have this many blowouts in a state final. We shouldn't have 2 state finals be 20 plus points. That's just outrageous in my mind.
Can't win them all, I guess.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts you guys want to bring up while we're still on it, or around any of this? Around, I don't even know. Just free form, I guess, here before we wrap up. Anything else that you want to throw in, Matt, at all?
I think the transfer portal is going to heat up now that we know where teams are at. I think we're going to see guys transferring, especially in July. I think we're going to see quite a few more people end up transferring.
You're going to see moves. You're going to have somebody or somebodies make their way to St. V's. That's just how it always goes with St. V's. You wouldn't be surprised to see Moeller have somebody go down there. You wouldn't be, all of these schools, you wouldn't be surprised to see them go try to grab another kid or 2 now that their divisions are set. I mean, hell, Tri-Village could go try to get another kid or 2 now that they're in D3.
Ha! No, that won't happen. It's going to be.
I mean, in general, you've got some of those teams that were very competitive in their previous divisions. In your Taft moving up, a lot of those schools.
Taft is one of the ones I'm interested to see.
Taft will be interesting. I mean, Meadowdale.
Yeah.
I know there's some rivalry internally in the Dayton City League.
CHCA.
Yeah.
popping out in Division Two. Yeah.
You know, Meadowbrook might have felt comfortable where they were at in D3, but, you know, I'm sure after seeing this, people were making some phone calls as to, so you guys had talked about maybe, you know.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that's just, and that's going on regardless, whether it's people calling other people up. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but we know it does happen. You know, it might not be those specific teams. There could be many other teams. Those were just ripe examples for, wow, we probably felt comfortable with where we were at, but now we're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Well, I think besides just the transfers, I think the other thing we're going to see now is because we now live in a culture where incoming freshmen have decided to treat going to high school like the college recruitment process for whatever freaking reason. I think borderline kids that didn't know where they were going to go are now going to do that. And to your point, Seth, like a player in Dayton that I know is an incoming freshman, they don't know where he's going to go yet. And he was playing with Meadowdale at Wright State's team camp. So that kid hasn't said where he's going, hasn't enrolled from my understanding. So, like, does this change that up? Because if they were in D3, that kid probably joins Cleary O'Reeves and Lee Benson. We're probably talking about Meadowdale winning a district title. Now they're in D2. We said they're going to be good, but is someone going to look at it that way? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we're going to see the incoming freshmen make their quote unquote announcement videos here as a result as well.
It will be interesting to know that they say, they say that they redetermine every year based on competitive balance data. But even still, either utilize it more frequently or utilize it only in those, move them down situations, unless it's, I mean, if you looked at the divisions again, when I looked at this, I'm thinking, okay, competitive balance to move up should be those cut as dry, clear as day. St. V should move up. Richmond Heights should move up. Outside of enrollment, which I know you have to do based on the numbers that you've decided. But if you're going to move teams up due to competitive balance, it should be cut and dry. There should be no questions, and it should make sense. Moving down, same thing. If a team's getting blown out year in, year out, they're not competitive in their division, move them down. But then when you've got teams that seemingly should be cut and dry and it's not happening, I think it's worth another evaluation, in my opinion, to take a look at that. Whether the answer is a fifth division, I don't know, or whether it's just actually being a little more proactive with some of the situations that are going on. But those are really my final thoughts. Tony, your final thoughts, I guess, as we wrap up.
Like I said, I mean, the OHSA is never going to be perfect with it. No. I know they do the best they can. I guess my only thing is to the people that are like actually upset on social media about it. I mean, OSHA doesn't go out there and fabricate numbers. They're not out there, not putting a guy here or there to balance it out. Like, the numbers are the numbers. So we can have conversations like this and digest it and give feedback. But like the people that are actually angry that, oh, they need to recount. No, they don't. That's the numbers are the numbers. If you're as good as you are, you'll win regardless of what division you're in. So another side right there. But no, overall, I mean, I think it's good. I'm glad that OSHA does this and they're transparent about it and let us see this stuff. Obviously we're still a couple months away from the start of the season, but I think that, it gives us a good starting talking point, especially for, this podcast being an example today of being able to just kind of talk about what Ohio and what Dayton and Cincinnati look like. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what the new challenges that arise with the teams that make the moves. And, like I said, if you're going to win, you're going to win whatever division you're in. So go out there and prove everybody wrong.
Yep. Matt, thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, I just think looking forward to next year. I think Division I was kind of wide open as it was, but with St. V moving up, that much more difficult. And then D2 kind of wide open. I'm excited to see those two divisions play out next season. I don't know that we have a clear favorite from either
No, I mean, and to that point, I guess that's maybe where some of this balance works out in our favor, because before you would have said D3 is probably, your usual suspects. Well, D2, as we talked about, is pretty wide open to the point where maybe a Taft or a CHCA can make some noise, even though they were just brought up.
Right.
So, all right, that do it, guys?
I think so.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. So again, thanks for listening in. Again, just our thoughts. Nothing's perfect. The numbers are what the numbers are. I'd be interested in how exactly the competitive numbers are calculated and what determines those numbers. And maybe at times I do wish that there was sort of an eye test aspect to it. But again, it's also hard to do based on the previous year and looking forward to the next year. Or if they waited and said, okay, this team's going to be really good coming into this year, then you get into a lot of speculation. So I think there's certainly probably a decent amount of gray area there. So they do their best with finite data and roll with it. But I don't know, man. Guys, a couple more weeks here, we'll be back into AAU, and then before you know it, we'll be back in high school gyms as we get the 2022-2023 season underway. I'm looking forward to it.
Can't wait. Hashtag Dayton Elite.
Jeez.
Hashtag Tri-State Hoops.
There you go, Matt. All right, guys. We'll sign off. Again, I'm Seth Keim. Thanks, Matt, for joining us, buddy. Really appreciate you. And as always, my partner in crime, Tony. Appreciate you, buddy.
Always love it.
All right, man.